Our guest today on the podcast is Paul Menig. Paul's been involved in technology for many, many years. In fact, we share a story on the podcast about old school electronic calculators, which, believe me, boys and girls, were a big deal at one time for computer enthusiasts. I think you'll enjoy this. He has a lot of really extensive insight in the industry, and his attention on mentorship in business is really, really great. Enjoy.
Hello, my name is Jack Stanley, and I'm the co-founder of the Tech Academy. I'd like to welcome you to the Tech Academy podcast. The Tech Academy operates a 15-week software developer bootcamp. You can find out more at our website, learncodinganywhere.com.
Awesome. By the way, my phone is getting blown up today, not just with normal work traffic, but with how was the movie traffic. Because I stayed up till
Star Wars.
Yeah, I watched it at midnight, got out of the theater just before 3. Couldn't be happier.
Oh my!
I'm so happy. They did a great job. I'm a pretty big fan.
Okay.
And they did a really good job.
We talked about that on the podcast on Wednesday too.
Oh yeah. That's right. Anticipation.
One guy had tickets for he and his 2 teenage boys for yesterday. For today.
Oh yeah.
I don't know exactly what time, and they were talking about they could remember what they were doing when the first Star Wars came out, and I had to say, well, I'm a little older than you two, and by the way, I was busy getting married and changing jobs that year, so I didn't see it the day one.
77 was a little bit different.
Yeah,
for you, that's right. That's it's pretty neat.
I have not seen all of them, I'm sure.
Okay,
I missed some of the last 3 because my wife is not into shoot 'em up, that kind of stuff, and so I got to watch that.
They're exemplary. They are really well-crafted, awesome movies. And this one, they took a really neat turn. This will be spoiler-free for anybody who's listening to the podcast and hasn't seen the movie. They made some very interesting and bold choices as regards some of the key characters and principles behind the universe of Star Wars. And I love the choices they made, but they're the kind of things that make you think and look at that universe a little bit differently. Yeah. So I'm seeing a little bit of noise from the nerdosphere this morning.
This is the 8th one, right? So there's still one more in
one more in the original.
We were talking about how did they imagine in 1977 that it would be this year? Well, they didn't, because as I remember, it was in the 90s that they decided, hey, those first 3 were pretty good. We better come up with a way of adding some more into the process. And
Exactly.
So they envisioned 9, not even knowing if it would survive that long. They would only do the next 3, and then they decided. And this one father was...
They've done pretty well. What were you going to say?
Well, he was going to, his son's convinced Han Solo died. Well, are you sure? Did you really see him die? And since Star Wars is not in sequence and you can have flashbacks and everything else, there's no way that I believe that he's really dead.
He lives on in my heart. That was tough. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm excited to talk with you. I get to talk military. I get to talk nerd geek stuff, MIT, and entrepreneurship, which is I'm a conflux of a lot of those things as well, except the MIT thing. I can spell it, but I didn't go there. So, just basic background, like where were you born and raised? How did you arrive into anything relating to technology? Tell me your story.
I was born in Detroit, so I was born in Auto Town.
Yeah.
Nobody in my family was a college graduate to speak of. I think one of my uncles might have graduated college, and because he worked in the office at General Motors, but everybody else was trained, skilled laborers.
Okay.
So a lot of what you're talking about here, becoming a coder and stuff, not having a degree.
Right.
So they were skilled craftsmen.
At the time, they could make a really decent living.
Absolutely, they did. Yeah. And I was interested in math and science. I was no good at art, mediocre at English, terrible at effort and study habits, and C's in conduct because I didn't
Welcome to my world.
So all A's and B's except for those conduct and study habit type stuff.
Yes. You didn't conform, did you?
No, I did not. Yes, though I was a nice kid. I went to a technical high school, which would be like a Lincoln High School here in town. So in high school, I took 8 semesters of electrical and electronics training. So I took...
Wow!
At that time, so this is 71 time frame, we had this magic book, which was the Army's training material for transistors. And that was our textbook for transistors that semester.
How cool!
And you mentioned in Idaho having actually working reactors and stuff. Yeah. This was an 8-story block, an entire city block, 8 stories high, and on one of the floors, an entire corner of the floor was a house. The interior of a house with all the 2x4s, all the rooms. And we would have people come in at night for training as well, and they would teach how to do electrical wiring into that house. And I had a job, earning some money. I was the inventory guy. I'd pass out the screwdrivers, the wire, the fasteners, and the duplex receptacles and the lights and stuff. And they'd go out and wire them in their class for 2 hours or whatever, get inspected to see if they, had done everything right. And then they'd pass it all back in and stuff. And when our classes during the daytime did some of that stuff as well. We had electric motors there and labs for electronic. I learned so much about pentodes, triodes, and all those things. The transconductance of a pentode, these long formula that absolutely useless to me. Absolutely useless. I have never, ever used it.
That's great.
But I knew how to slip my stick really fast because we didn't have calculators when I learned initially.
You had a slide rule.
My first calculator didn't get into my hands until freshman year at MIT.
What was that like?
Which? The slide rule? Or
no.
Calculator?
Actually getting an electronic calculator. What was the attitude towards it at the time? Now they're completely, of course, taken for granted, and you have them on your phone, blah, blah, blah.
We're not talking programmable.
Right, okay.
So it was an HP 35. I paid $215 or $235 for it.
In the early 70s?
In 77.
That was a lot of money there.
And that was after the price had just come down from $365 or something. I waited in order to get it. Kind of stuff. I kept that for years and years. When the battery failed, I just wired up some electrical converter to it to keep it going for a long time. But then
awesome.
Now the calculator has to be portable like this on my iPhone, since podcast you can't see what I'm doing. And that's when I ditched the 35. I said, I need something that I can carry around, and I can't always be plugged into the wall with my calculator anymore.
Yeah, this is a little bit of a detour, but it's kind of an interesting story. I was just reading an article the other day about hackers in, I believe it was Romania, who in the 90s, under a pretty repressive regime, were building their own computers, which you were absolutely not allowed to do. And they were just scavenging parts on the black market. And it was kind of a neat sort of bittersweet moment in there where the guy who, it's been many years and their country's in much better state, and he works as an IT professional, and he pulled out of his closet his basically hacked machine that he constructed out of all the parts he could scavenge, and over a period of about 12 hours with him and some buddies, got it to fire up again. It hadn't been powered up in 10 or 15 years.
I think maybe we ought to call that the maker movement rather than the hackers.
Yes.
Since hackers has a very negative connotation
it's
now.
So much. I'm old school, growing up in the 80s, and the hackers were the phone freaks and the guys that were they weren't doing anything nefarious at all.
Right.
They were building and making things, and it shifted over to, you're going to hack into something is ill intent. So you're right. They were makers under a communist regime, which is not okay.
Right.
So look at your resume. I've got MIT on there. How do you jump from obviously a pretty cool technical high school to arriving at MIT? What was your journey like there?
I had decided back then that I wanted to be a biomedical electrical engineer. I wanted to combine, medicine and all that stuff. I wanted to make prostheses and heart pacemakers and all of that.
Yeah.
And at that time, MIT was a school that had a degree specifically, in that they were kind of at the forefront of degrees that combined different disciplines and things.
Yeah.
And so I was lucky enough to get in there. Even though I did well in high school, you have to go through an interview with an alumni.
Yeah.
At least one alumni.
Yeah.
And he told me after interviewing me, I don't think you're going to get in. He gave me no thing.
Wow.
And I tell people, well, I was their quota requirement for Michigan that year. and it worked.
Got to get someone from the UP.
Yeah. So
he could count to 10, except he doesn't have all his fingers. All right, go ahead.
When I got there in the sophomore year, you can apply for a cooperative education version of curriculum, where you go out and work at a company for a semester, and you get credit for doing that and get reviewed. So I joined that. My first semester summer was at General Electric Research and Development in Schenectady, and I got done with that and some other things, and I decided I really didn't care about biomedical so much as I just liked electrical engineering. The other big thing was similar to those pentode transconductance equations. I had a class in the three-dimensional diffusion of chemicals in the body. And those equations and deltas and other things, which were worse than Faraday's law and all those other things, I said, no, just straight electronics. Yes. I will go that way. Now, fortunately, after I got out of school, I had a chance, after my first year working on guided bombs, to go to work for General Electric medical systems and get to try out, did I really care about biomedical stuff? So I spent 2.5 years at GE Medical then, developing cardiac pacemaker monitor devices for the intensive care units, standing aside nuclear magnetic resonance imaging and some other things, and I came to feel that I just enjoyed electronics, but I still like medical. I get medical tech briefs, for instance, and follow those different things. You'll see one medical item in the presentation today that in a bad light, actually.
Okay. I got a question. I'm curious about the change in the workaday world, in terms of how long people stay at certain places and the loyalty to different companies and that kind of thing. You work, obviously in college, you had the thing up in Schenectady where you were at GE, and then you got employed by GE at a certain point. When you were entering the workforce, was it still this climate of you kind of just join a place and you're there for the long haul? Was it starting to switch? Because now obviously it's a very fragmented, people have 15 to 30 different jobs throughout their lifetimes. That kind of thing. What was it like?
It was in transition at that point in time. It wasn't the join and stay for your life.
Okay.
The statistics, as I recall back then, were that most engineers, people coming out of college, were going to have 3 jobs in their first 5 years. So it was kind of like a 1 to 2 year kind of time frame that you'd be in a job, and then you would move. Now,
it wasn't the kind of thing earlier where you joined Big Blue and you're there for the rest of your life.
No, that wasn't quite the expectation. There were some that did that. I could have ended up that way with General Electric.
Okay.
Just happened to be able to find another job within the same city, and I didn't have all I had to do was change the direction out of the driveway when I left General Electric and started with Eaton. And if I'd had to move, I probably wouldn't have done it at that time.
Okay.
In fact, I know I wouldn't have done it at that time because I changed jobs in February 1st. My wife was already pregnant, and I waited out the 30 days to get on the medical plan for her to be covered by the new company, and then our child was born on April 8th. So,
no, you hold on to that baby.
40 days there where the infant could have come early, and I'd have been in trouble.
Oh, wow. Let's keep everything quiet and peaceful around here until she's good. Wow. How many kids do you have?
I have 2 grown children, 37 and 36.
Wow.
One is here in town, works with Portland Impact Northwest.
Yeah. Great organization.
She works on the STEM program development over there.
Well, we certainly want to talk to her. Wow, that's great.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great.
And is your other child a boy?
The other child's a boy. He's up in Seattle. He's just started a new job he was CEO of a company that deals with market research panels. Yeah. He was part of merging and selling that company. Okay. He was the CEO there for a couple of years, and now he's the chief operating officer at another company. I would have to call it a non-headquartered company. For the government, it has a headquarter, but some of the people are in L.A. He's up in Seattle. Some of the people are in Louisiana, and he's the chief operating officer. So he's got it's all electronic.
Yeah, and that's more and more common nowadays. It's pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about what you're doing now.
So now I'm trying to help all kinds of companies. I've been an angel investor in the last few years. I do pro bono consulting as a SCORE business mentor.
Oh, cool. Service Corps of Retired Executives.
That's what it used to stand for. It's like we were talking about FUBAR and SNAFU. You don't really say what the letters mean anymore. It's just SCORE now.
Really?
Yeah.
It's officially what we call
it's officially
SCORE.
No longer an acronym because
So
we allow people.
Are they retconning how it like?
Well, we don't only have retired people involved in it, and you don't have to be retired to be part of it. So that's a major change.
Actually, you're right. That's a value. But I didn't know that, by the way.
Yeah, there's about 12,000 volunteers right now, and around 300 different chapters around town.
I have a friend who owns a plumbing business up in Vancouver, and she worked with a couple SCORE advisors, and absolutely loved it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I get about from what I've calculated around 5 clients a month that I'm working with, and so over 5.5 years I've helped over 300 different businesses. And then I try to go upscale from there and get people to pay me to actually help them grow their businesses. And I'll be talking about one aspect of one of my clients today in the presentation, because it's a company it's a startup, public information funded to the tune of about $13 million by venture capitalists 2 years ago.
Right.
They have working hardware out on the roads right now to do vision pattern recognition processing. So when you talk about coding, I mean, there's a whole lot of coding in that area called deep learning, and we were talking SCRAMs. This uses SLAM, monocular SLAM, which is simultaneous localization and mapping. So being able to take and get more out of a single camera than you would think you could.
Okay, that's cool.
And I don't understand the algorithms.
That's
I'm sorry.
Cool stuff. It's interesting. A lot of, there's been this idea for many, many years that you have to be really good at math to be a developer. And in most cases, that's really not actually the case. If you're decent at, regular arithmetic, you can be just fine. But there are specific applications like that where your math needs to be spot on, and your ability to relate real world physical concepts to representation as an algorithm or a mathematical formula.
Yeah.
That
so yes, there's going to be places there where you need your doctorate in machine language learning and a bunch of other things, and artificial intelligence and all of that. And yet at other places, it's going to become just a function call, and you pass it a variable. Except the variable happens to be a video stream that's 2 minutes long. It's a big variable.
And you see the big tech giants getting in on this pretty hardcore. All three, Google and Amazon and Microsoft, all are providing cloud offerings for essentially processing tremendously large sets of data. They might call it machine learning.
Well, and you're not even mentioning IBM Watson. Watson is service in a cloud right now. Come to us and we'll help you. Dr. Watson, come quickly.
That's awesome. Wow. How long have you lived in Oregon?
23 years. I have webbing between my fingers and my toes now.
That's about right. I've been here, 94.
Yes.
I got here in February of 94 after I left.
Okay, you beat me. I was July 1, 94 is
when
I started working here.
As a veteran here. Oh, yeah, actually, I'm joking, but that does remind me that I want to talk about veterans and the work you're doing with the transportation organization. Tell me about that. What is it?
Transportation involves trucks, which I've been part of. It involves shipping and handling in centers like Amazon's distribution center or Walmart. It involves planes and trains and boats and cars. My former company, Daimler, just demonstrated a different version of doing drone deliveries. UPS is heavy into experimenting with drone deliveries. Workhorse is building trucks that have drones in them.
Who's Workhorse?
Workhorse is a kind of a work truck manufacturer out east in the Midwest that makes a panel van. Looks like a UPS truck, basically. And that's their main thing, but they're doing electric versions of that. They're doing versions that have a sunroof, if you will, that a drone can come out of and make deliveries. And people are honestly experimenting with doing that kind of stuff.
That's fantastic.
So somebody here in Oregon who was a veteran himself, 11 years in logistics in the Army, then was a owner-operator driver for many years, and then got into rebuilding trailers. He takes a used trailer from a large fleet, redoes it, and then sells it. And he's made super good money at the process. Has become an investor, knows some people in the military, came up with this idea. He purchased a little over 200 acres of land outside of Indianapolis, Indiana. Just recently bought it was a church retreat center, so we now have a large auditorium available to us, some classrooms, cafeteria, some hotels space and things. He bought a separate work center just recently as well over there. And we are selling the idea that we want to create a center for training in transportation of all sorts, whether it's drivers, diesel technicians, electrical technicians. I wouldn't expect coding to be part of it necessarily. Airplanes, inspectors, crane operators, forklift truck operators, all of those things. And one of the things that I'm trying to understand is how much of that should be on a physical campus versus how much of that should be remotely done. How could we make use of Xboxes and 360s or whatever the latest game box is? I'm not up on them, but it would be much better to get people interested while they're sitting on their couch in doing something. I can imagine two people sitting side by side, a guy and a gal, and instead of trying to do what you might think they might be trying to do, instead they're both wearing virtual reality goggles, and they are having a competition to see who can disassemble and repair and reassemble a transmission for a car faster. Then, if they can do it in virtual reality, then you probably have to have go to a campus for a week only now to make sure that you can take your test. So instead of tests being online, the tests are in person. So I'm trying to understand how is education going to change in the future so that we can get all the people we need in all these jobs. You're doing it just in order to get more people who can do coding, but there's a lot more jobs out there that we're going to have to do as Amazon's robots take away packing things on shelves. That means we have to have people who can understand why the robot's not packing the shelves.
Yes,
it's easier than just coming out and say, Juan or Jose or Habib or Paul or whatever. Step it up. You got to get going a little bit faster. Now it's the robot's just sitting there. It's not doing anything. Wrong with that
servo? Did the power pack die? Or is there some incorrect algorithm inside it?
You can't talk to it and say, Hey, Johnny Robot, what's wrong with you?
Johnny Robot, that's awesome. I can picture a point, and this is a bit facetious, but where our robots have been, just for fun, installed with a little bit of a personality. And
yes.
Well, it's Monday. Mondays for robots are tough.
You may be a little young to remember the Jetsons and their maid servant.
Jetson?
Yeah.
Yep, I know a bit of it. Wow. So you've got your hands on a lot of different pies right now.
Yeah, maybe too many.
But
it's fun
stuff. Yeah, it's exciting stuff. Awesome. Well, I think that I think our students are going to love hearing from you, right? And I appreciate you taking the time to come down and talk with us. And I'd love to talk with you offline about the transportation center out.
Be great. Yeah,
in the Midwest, right?
Midwest, outside Indianapolis, Indiana.
Yeah, I'd be really unfortunate if I had to take a trip out there to check out the thing and go to the Brickyard and take a look at Indianapolis. Big racing fan. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sitting down with us, Paul. I appreciate it, and
great.
I hope you enjoy meeting our students in a few moments.
I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Eric.
Cool.
Hi, this is Jack Stanley again, co-founder of the Tech Academy. I'd like to leave you with a suggestion. We call this Jack's Random Tips. Today's tip is, an important factor in goal attainment and achieving success in whatever you're working on is hard work. There are 168 hours in a week. Most people work about 40 hours, sleep about 56 hours, and are left with another 72 hours. Now, I'm not proposing that people spend every waking hour working. One needs time for driving, entertainment, exercise, etc. But just mathematically speaking, there are spare hours in the week to get more done. Now, most people spend a lot of this time watching TV or gaming. Statistically speaking, Americans spend an average of 35 hours a week watching television. If you think about it, that's like another full-time job. And also, I'm not proposing that you should never watch TV. I am simply pointing out how many hours exist each week, which you can spend how you see fit. It is common to find that those who are in high positions and surviving well in life work more hours each week than the average person. I myself have been working an average of 60 to 80 hours a week for the majority of my adult life. But even aside from how many hours someone works each week, there is how hard they work while working. A hardworking person can get more done in 20 hours than someone who is behaving in a slow-moving or lazy fashion in 40 hours. What do I mean by hard work? Well, I mean focusing on what you're doing, moving fast, not getting distracted, staying positive, persisting. Think about it like the opposite of a sloth. Look at it this way. If you have to wash the dishes and you move slow, dragging your feet, procrastinating, etc., it might take you 25 minutes. Whereas if you moved fast, motivated to get it over with and concentrating, you could get it done in 5 or 10 minutes. You can literally create more time for yourself by working hard. I love to kick up my feet as much as the next guy, but I buy myself free time by working hard the rest of the time. So, are you working hard or hardly working? And again, if you are interested in enrolling in our Software Developer Bootcamp, please visit our website, learncodinganywhere.com.